Before dawn, Operation Golden Victory began. Saudi coalition troops advanced on Hodeidah after fighter jets and warships had bombed Houthi targets first. Yemeni forces are taking the lead, backed by Emirati and Sudanese troops. The Arab force is believed to number over 20,000. They're moving in from the south towards the city's airport, and they say the time to negotiate with the Shia Houthis who occupy the city has run out. We're heading towards Hodeidah to liberate it from the Shia filth, says this Yemeni fighter. We tell our brothers not to join the Houthis who support Iran, says another, standing beside a dead body, or this will be their fate. A few days ago, the Houthis filmed this attack on what they said was a Saudi military vehicle. They're fighting outside Hodeidah, knowing that if they lose the port, they also lose their supply of food and weapons. Though last week their leader tried to sound relaxed. They can start a battle here, he said, but they can't win it, and this childish tactic will fail. Aid agencies fear that up to 500,000 people could be displaced by fighting for this city, and that aid deliveries from the outside world could be cut off. The Houthis control most of Yemen's population centres, including the capital. But in the last month, the Saudi-led coalition has advanced towards Hodeidah. The port is Yemen's primary artery for food and aid, supplying 80% of Yemenis. The coalition claims the Houthis use it for arms smuggling and that capturing it will force them to sue for peace. But aid agencies warn that could leave 8 million people at risk of starvation.
The port of Hodeidah feeds 2/3 of Yemen. We have 29 million people in Yemen, of which 8 million are already at risk of famine. 8 million people, even before this morning, were already at risk of starvation. If the port is closed, even for a day, this means that these people will die.
I'm very lucky to be here.
The UN's new special envoy for Yemen is no longer so lucky, because the peace plan he was about to deliver could now lie in ruins. And the UK's former International Development Secretary told me it's time to stop siding with the Saudis and to push for a ceasefire.
Every single humanitarian body, every single agency in the world has urged the Saudi coalition not to attack Hodeidah for the reasons I've set out. It is militarily lunatic, it is probably a breach of international humanitarian law, and it will cause enormous suffering and death amongst hundreds of thousands of poor Yemenis. We are on the wrong side. We shouldn't be on any side. We hold the pen at the United Nations. We have an obligation, a duty to neutrality to try and bring the ceasefire about and get the negotiations going. But effectively, we are part of the coalition, and we need to distance ourselves from that.
But consider this, the UK has licensed well over £4 billion of arms sales to the Saudis and their defence minister, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, since the bombing of Yemen began 3 years ago. And while British firms arm the Saudis, British taxpayers are helping keep the victims of this war alive with aid. It's a moral quagmire, and one which seems set to deepen if this coalition advance makes the world's biggest humanitarian crisis even worse.
Of course we feel the effects, because we know the effect of any attack to Hodeidah would have to the children of Yemen. Any attack to Hodeidah will have an impact not only on the population of Hodeidah, which is 600,000 people, half of them children, but also indirectly on the entire population of the country, because, as you know, 80% of the goods and the humanitarian aid, they come through the port of Hodeidah. So any attack to the port will have a direct impact on the humanitarian assistance we are providing to almost 11 million children. So, of course, we are feeling the impact.
Do you have any awareness of what sort of protection is being offered to the children? Or is it simply an assault on the whole city?
Well, we don't know exactly what is going to happen. However, we are appealing to the parties in the conflict to please preserve, of course, human lives, civilians, children, and also those infrastructure that are essential, such as the health centers, the schools, and the water infrastructure.
Ms. Relano, how long have you been in Yemen yourself, working?
Almost 3 years.
And in those 3 years, have you seen anything improve, or has it simply got worse and worse?
Well, obviously, everything is going worse because at the beginning, the families were able to cope with the initial months of conflict. Then they started losing, of course, their jobs. Now the teachers have not been paid for almost 2 years, the health workers, there are no new jobs coming up. The families don't have any savings. And of course, the poverty is increasing to reach almost 80% of the population.
If you could speak to the United Nations tonight, I mean, what would you ask?
I would ask all the parties in the conflict to please sit and negotiate because it's not a very feasible solution to the conflict to go through the military route. We have to find peaceful solutions because otherwise millions of children might lose their life. It's very important that we preserve the life of the most vulnerable.